Motion Library in Adobe Character Animator gives your characters a whole new way to walk, jump, fight, dance, and more. Choose from a library of over 350 pre-made motions to quickly and easily add different movements, and then tweak the parameters below to customize the selected motion to your character's personality. Click the Record One Motion button to lay down an instance of the motion into your timeline, where you can move or expand it to whatever positioning and duration you want. You can record multiple motions and use the blend handles to combine them into one seamless performance. So whether you need a simple idle animation or a full-blown ninja fight scene, Motion Library is a helpful, time-saving, and fun tool to use. Hey everyone, this is Dave from the Adobe Character Animator team, and I'm incredibly excited to announce that today we are releasing a new feature called Motion Library. Motion Library lets you choose from over 350 pre-made animations to add new, really easy movements to your character, whether that's fighting, running, walking, dancing, or all sorts of other things. So in this tutorial, we're going to walk through how Motion Library works. We're going to start with free example characters and walking through the parameters to understand how to change to different moods and tweak them to match your character's personality. Then we'll move into the recording process and how to record multiple motions and blend them all together to look like one continuous animation. And finally, we will finish with the rigging process, how to add Motion Library to your own custom characters. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. All right, so let's begin by digging into the Motion Library and understanding how it works. So I'm going to use this free example character, Mo. He is free and available to download on our Motion Library mini website. You can download him and other characters and example files to take them apart, learn how they work, or use them in your own creations. So I realized that a character has Motion Library enabled if I click on them in the timeline down here, and then I notice on the right-hand side, one of their many behaviors is called Motion Library. So to add a motion, all I have to do is click on this drop-down menu, and you'll see I have a bunch of different categories of types of motions. So there are over 350 motions packed in here for this first version, and it's a lot to go through. So they're categorized in different areas. So we've got idle animations for your character staying still, walk animations. Now this is separate from the walk behavior we have. This is kind of a separate way to do walk animations. Run animations, dance moves, probably my personal favorite category, very fun to add. Different fight moves, jumps, different sport moves, and different gestures. Okay, so to start out, let's just go to idle and do something very simple like breathe to. So this is going to add a breathing animation to my character, and you see how he's kind of breathing in and out. And you'll notice that really as I move my head around in arms or anything like that, it's not affecting the character. The only thing I am affecting are things like the eyes, the eyebrows, and the lip sync. All those other things are covered by the motion. So you can think of it as it like this part usually is the face and the voice. That's what you are going to control. And then Motion Library is going to take care of the rest. Now there's ways to change that I'll show you a little later, but by default, that's usually how it goes. To preview different motions, I can go back to the drop down and pick the next thing in the list, but I can also use these little arrows, which are really handy because once you know a category, you say, okay, I want an idle animation. I can just go through and cycle through a bunch of these until I see one that I really like. So this fidget, for example, is pretty nice. Now the next parameter down here is called speed, and I can speed up my animations or slow them down to better fit whatever I'm doing. This is great for the dance animations in particular, because if you're trying to match a dance move to the beat of a song, you can kind of speed it up or slow it down to match that. But let's do something fun like, jump and jumping jacks is a really good one. That's kind of a nice test one for a lot of characters to make sure their arms and legs are moving as you would expect. So for this, I can of course slow it down by dragging over this number, and now I've got kind of these zero gravity jumping jacks that Mo is doing. Or if Mo has had like 20 shots of espresso, I can turn it up to 319% and he's going absolutely ballistic. As always, I can reset back to the normal default by just clicking the little X that appears to go back to normal speed. Now, not every animation is going to always fit your character perfectly. Case in point, here I've got Mo with a surprised motion attached to him. So it looks like he's kind of staggering back, looking like he's surprised at something that's happening on the left-hand side of the screen. But it's a little weird with his hands, like how they're kind of like crossing over each other. It's something looks like it's not quite right. And that's because In Character Animator, you can make a character facing or looking any way you want, right? Front facing, like Mo, quarter, profile, back, up, down, whatever you want. And these animations were also set with a particular direction in mind. So I'm guessing from the looks of this that this was probably more meant for a profile, a side-facing character who's kind of like staggering back at something they see towards their side. But I have a few options at my disposal to tweak this animation to maybe better fit Mo. And those are these three down here: orientation, preferred orientation, and mirror. So what orientation is going to do is it's basically a dial that's going to allow me to fine tune and tweak this particular animation to possibly better fit my character. So let's say something like, I don't know, 103 or something like that. And my character has kind of gone off the screen. If you ever see this happening, sometimes when you're playing around with these parameters, they can mess up the character positioning. Really easy to fix. Just click this reset position button down here, and he's going to go back to his original center screen position. You can also press the refresh icon here, which will refresh your scene all the time. So already I can tell this looks a little bit better, right? This feels a little bit better for his arms kind of facing forward. It fixes that kind of arms crossing over issue. But now he's going the opposite way. He's looking at something that's scary, like the cake or the cups over here, and I want him to be scared of something on the other side. So what I can do is just click the mirror checkbox here, and now it's going to mirror that animation and make him more scared of the side. And again, I'm going to press reset position to center him back on the screen. So any character you have, if things are not looking that great from the beginning, you can just tweak this little dial and see and play around with different angles and see if you can get it to fit the character well. And then if the direction is feeling like an issue, your character's facing one way and it really feels like, they should be moving the other way instead, try checking that mirror option as well. Preferred orientation, you can uncheck, but honestly, I've almost rarely ever done that. It's basically just saying, do you want to use the animator's preferred orientation of how they do their animation? Most of the time, that's what I want to do, so I want to start from that, what the animator had intended, but you do have the option of checking it off. If you do check it off, most of these animations are going to, by default, be for front-facing characters. So just have that as a note, but overall, I almost always keep this checked. So are all these checkboxes magically going to make every single of the 350 plus motions work for every single character in Character Animator? No. There's just going to be some animations and some character rigs and styles that just aren't going to work. But with these tools, you can kind of tweak things and try to get it working a little bit better for your character and the way your limbs are and your body movements and all of that. It's a trial and error process with each motion. So anytime I pick a motion and have a specific character in mind, I'm going to fiddle around with these until I get something that I think looks pretty good. Now, all of these motions are basically loops. And what happens when an animation ends at a loop? That's what this next drop down is for, root position. Right now we've got this set to reset at loop, and I've got a walk animation up here, walk 2, because I think this is the best way to showcase how this works. So reset at loop is going to do exactly what it says. It kind of teleports the character back to the beginning and resets them when the loop is over. But I could also pick continuous, and if I do that, Mo's just going to keep walking off the screen, continuous. The loop just keeps going on in one forward momentum direction. So probably don't want that for right now for testing out, but if I actually want Mo to walk from one side of the screen to the next, if I was recording something, which I'll show a little bit later, continuous is probably what I would want. But for here, maybe for testing purposes, something like treadmill might be a good way to show it. And in this case, the character is going to basically stay stationary, but they're going to move in one place, kind of in their center position, so you can see what this, how this walk animation is going to look, and I can make modifications without him constantly teleporting or walking off the screen. Now, sometimes you can play around with these parameters to make a motion that you didn't think would work for your character to actually tweak it and make an interesting variant of the original animation. So like this walk, this probably doesn't look that good for Mo, right? Because he's kind of walking sideways like a crab. If anything, I probably, in his view, would want him to be walking forward towards the camera, right? And this kind of sideways thing that he's doing with his legs and his arms isn't working. But if I went to orientation here and tweak this a little bit, let's do like 42, something like that, that looks a little bit better, like he's walking in place, like he's just stomping and marching in place. And if I added that with a little bit of a transform here, let's change the scale. that would look like he's kind of walking towards the camera. So I could add some keyframes there if I wanted to have that sort of thing. So what originally looked like it wasn't that great of an animation, I was able to modify and get it to something that I could work with for this character. And while we're on the subject of fine-tuning your character, let's go back to the jumping jacks here, because I think that shows things really well. And imagine I wanted to do that I felt these jumping jacks were a little too strong. The legs and the arms and the body movement, it was just a little too much. Well, actually, I can go into the body behavior, not the motion library behavior, but go into body, and there's this parameter called strength. And if I start to turn this down, you'll notice it kind of weakens the pull that motion library has over everything. So again, now I've changed jumping jacks into more of like a cheering character going up and down, yay, this is great type of thing. So that's another kind of knob you can play around with. And yes, every motion library character should also have the body behavior. That's a requirement that they're both there. So it's another thing you can play around with. Under root position, we have tracked handles. And if I look at this, everything that's checked is being taken over by the motion library animation. So in this case, I've added a breakdancing animation to Mo here. And you'll notice that as I move my head around, that has no effect on the animation. Why is that? Well, because head and head rotation and neck are already checked here. Now, if I wanted to regain control of them, I could just uncheck these. And it's going to look a little weird. You know, he's not really getting the bounce that he originally had because I'm adding the head and trying to go along with his motions. So I'm probably going to want to keep those checked. But by the same token, I probably don't want to check all of these things, like the shoulders and hips here have been left off. And that's because if I do add all this extra stuff back in, it can lead to some weird warping issues and not quite translating that well to the character. So whatever the defaults are, I'd say most of the time that's what you should leave as is. So again, I'm just going to click all these X's to go back to my factory default settings, and that's going to probably look the best. Now, having said that, this is an option at your disposal if you want to change things. So for example, if I want my character's left hand and I want him to be waving or moving differently than this swinging animation, I could actually turn off elbow and wrist. And now you'll see his hand is available for me to control. So I could drag it and do what kind of ever motions I wanted to with it. So you do have that as an option to add some custom details and animations to the original motion. Okay, so now we've got a dancing robot. Okay, so now what are we going to do? Well, I'm guessing most of you are going to want to record something with these motions. In fact, you probably want multiple motions recorded next to each other. Maybe the character walks in and then does a breathing animation and then does a gesture and then starts breaking into dance. Well, you can do all these things and it's a pretty easy process. So the way I'm going to do that is if I've got my robot here and I've got this hip hop running man thing going on here, I'm going to go ahead and click the record one motion button down here. What that's going to do is wherever my playhead is, it's going to add one loop of that motion by default. And so that could be a varying length. If it's a very long one, it could be, 10, 15 seconds. If it's short, it could only be a couple of seconds. But the beauty of this is I can make this as short or as long as I want. I can move it around to wherever I want, and I can also make it much longer, or I can make it much shorter if I wanted to as well. So you have full flexibility of how long or short that loop is. And if I just want to see the recorded data and not my character doing what this live data that's happening, all I have to do is in my timeline, remember, just turn off the red dot. Anytime you turn off the red dot in the timeline, it means you're only going to see recorded data. So now as I scrub through this, I can see my robot doing the running man for about 15 seconds, and that's looking pretty good. But come on, this robot knows some more dance moves than that. So if I want to add more motions, it's actually pretty easy to layer them on top. So let's turn our robot back on, arm it, and let's go back to our motion library and find another dance. Let's go back to that breakdancing move that I was doing earlier with the robot. Okay, so now to add this instance, I'm just going to click record one motion. And it's doing a short, like just 2-second loop, but I'm going to extend that a little bit, just a few more seconds. And then let's do one more. Let's find one more dance. Maybe the, I really should go for the robot dance, seeing what character it is, but let's just go for a salsa dance instead. Something like that. That's looking great. Okay, so now I'm going to click record one motion again, and this is a little bit longer. And now I have 3 unique motions that I want to blend together. So the way I'm going to do that is let's press plus to get in this a little bit closer in the timeline. And then just like you would do with any other recorded take, I'm going to take these and I'm going to click on the little little squares at the top, the little blend handles, and this is going to allow me to blend one performance into the next. So again, if you ever see this shadow, it means this take now is completely getting overwritten by the one above it. So I'm starting off here with the running man. He's doing that. Let's actually play this back and see how it goes. So let's play. He's starting to do the running man. Now he should start to blend into that breakdancing move. And finally, he's going to blend and finish into the salsa. So taking that same concept, we can build up more elaborate sequences, like a fight scene between two ninjas. So I'll play this little 10-second sequence and then I'll show you how I did it. So let's play here. They're both in a pose. We get a kick in the face, a little jab there, then an up kick that gets blocked, a little premature victory, and then kicked in the face and kicked off the screen. So first, let's take a look at the red ninja. I'm starting off with an idle fight here, and then we move into a jump kick, it looks like. Flying kick number 2 gets kicked in the face over there. Then we're going to do surprised, and that's the exact same thing that I did with Mo, where the character staggers back as if they were surprised by being, shocked by being hit or by scared by something. Then we're going to move into a block here, block number 1, and then finally we're going to move into this inside crescent kick, which is going to be this great leaping kick where the leap happens and then the other character goes flying. And then we go back into the original fight idle position. For our other character here, the green ninja, we're going to have a little bit of the same. So we start with the same idle fight position. Then we're going to move into this get hit in head, which is a great one. So he's going to hit right there in the head, stagger back a little bit. Then we're going to do a hook. So he does this hook punch that hits the other character back. Then we're going to do a run, a slow run forward, and that moves into another, I don't know what type of kick this is, martello it says, some sort of special ninja move there, kick in the face. Then I did this premature victory thing where he kind of puts his fist in the air, thinks he's won it, but he actually hasn't, and it goes back to this getting hit on head hard motion. And then I added some transform keyframes to actually have him move his position and rotate back to look like he's getting hit off the screen. Now you might have noticed to help really sell the effect, as I go through here, there's these hits that happen, these little flashes. These are just small cycle layers animations that I added and keyframe different positions for them for where they are to just help add to the impact, make those feel like those hits and those kicks landed a little bit better. Now, one thing to note when you're doing something more complicated like this is when you're playing things back, you always kind of want to start from 0, right? You want to start from the beginning. And the problem with going from anywhere else is as you're scrubbing around and moving back and forth, sometimes these loops positions are going to get out of sync. Like right now, the characters are not punching each other. They're on completely opposite sides of the screen. And that's because as I was moving around, I was changing the direction of the loops and where they were, and it's just messing up where the initial starting point is. But all I have to do is go back to the beginning, click this refresh button to make sure the scene is refreshed, and then scrub from here or play back from here, and you should get everything looking exactly like you want. All right, so you've seen all this stuff and you say, I'm ready to add motion library to my own characters. How do I rig them? How do I get this working? So I'm going to walk through this character step by step of how I would do it. This character has absolutely nothing happening with them. I've just added them to a scene and they're kind of rotating without any kind of rigging whatsoever. So let's go into rig mode and set them up. So the very first thing I'm going to do is add 3 behaviors to my character. I'm going to do those at the top level here with all my other behaviors. So I'm going to go ahead and add the body behavior for body tracking. I'm going to add the limb IK behavior for making sure the limbs bend the right way. And I'm finally going to add the new motion library behavior that this tutorial has been all about. All of these 3 behaviors work together. And so you always want them together and you want them at the same level, in the same hierarchy, the same place in your puppet. Now I've got some basic rigging to my puppet that I've shown in other videos. So for example, I know that I want my arms to be their own separate groups and they're independent. They have the little crown, meaning they can move on their own. And same thing with the legs. And I've got the rest of my character set up in a head group and a body group. So in general, the basic rigging is looking pretty good. I'm going to do a few things though. First, I'm going to select my head group and I'm going to drag this down, the origin, down to where the neck is, because that's normally where I want the character's head to pivot. Now, normally I would say tag this as a neck, but for motion library, it tends to work better if you don't do this and you actually make the neck part of the body. Your mileage may vary. You can play around with this, but in my experiments, this has worked a little bit better. So we're done with the head now. And now when I move into the body, we're going to start basically rigging as if we were rigging this character for either walking or body tracking. So the exact same way that you would do those sorts of things should work pretty well for this. So let's take my left arm, which is independent. I'm going to drag the origin until it connects to the character up here. Then I'm going to go down to my add handle tool down here, and I'm going to add a handle for where the elbow is and tag that as over here as a left elbow. And then here where the wrist would be and tag this as left wrist. Now, if your character actually had hands and not stubs like this character did, you would probably want to still keep your wrist here and have the hand show up on the outside of it, because that's going to lead to some hand rotation that should give your character some extra personality and some extra character. So it's worth it to do it that way. For this character, though, we'll just leave the wrist right here. And then finally, I'm going to take the stick tool down here and I'm going to click and drag to add where the bones would be. Again, I've shown this in a lot of other videos, so hopefully this is just a refresher if you've seen this already. Let's go back to my selection tool and drag the origin of the right arm here so it connects to the character, and do the exact same thing I did with the left arm. So we'll put an elbow here, tag it as right elbow, and then tag around here as right wrist, and then get my stick tool and do the exact same thing with the sticks. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let's move on to the legs. I'm going to drag the origin here until it connects to my character. Then I'm going to add a knee right here. That's going to be the left knee. I'm going to do an ankle. Actually, you know what? I don't have to do the ankle. I forgot about that. The ankle isn't necessary for body tracking. So for motion library. So it's not even tracked. So don't even worry about that. Let's just add in the heel here. And then let's make one more for the toe. And we'll do the same thing for the right leg. Let's go ahead and drag the origin up here. And again, the knee, and we'll do the heel. You don't have to do the ankle for this, and we will do the toe. And now, just to give it a little more structure, I'm going to do the sticks where I would expect those bones to be in between each of these parts with the right leg, and finishing up with the left leg. Okay, so my limbs are looking pretty good, but now let's move to the body, and I can see these green dots where I know where my arms and legs have connected to my character. So what I'm going to do is add a bunch more handles here. So let's add one right over this green dot, and that's going to be my left hip, then one over the right dot, and we're going to call that my right hip. And then I'm going to put one in between them, right around there, and we're going to call that the waist. Now you can play around with the waist placement, make it higher or lower, whatever works for you. But for this, I'm just going to keep it right there, kind of in between the two hips. And similarly, we're going to do the same thing up here. So I'm going to make where the right arm connects to the character and make that the right shoulder. I'm going to do this connection point, make that the left shoulder. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I get a little bit easier place where I can put right here and add the neck. This is my recommended place of where I would put the neck. Again, just like the waist, you can play around with the positioning here and see how it affects your character. But in general, these are kind of the 6 tags that we want to see on your body group. Okay, so I think I've done everything correctly. So let's go back into record mode. Okay, and by default, my character's looking pretty good. Following my head movements, everything's looking great. Let's try motion library now. Let's go into the dance moves and try adding hip hop dance number 2. And he's doing it. Let's try a few different ones. Looking good. Yeah, so this is pretty easy. Basically, if you know how to do walk rigging or body tracking rigging, you can do the exact same thing for your character here, and you should be good to go. So that's it. That's all there is to it. Motion library is pretty easy to work with, and it's a lot of fun to see your characters suddenly come to life and start moving all over the place. You don't have to be over the top with dance moves or fight moves. Even just the simple idle motions and walk cycles and gestures are more than enough to help bring your characters to life. So I'm really excited to see what everyone makes with this. So please, when you share your stuff online, use #CharacterAnimator on social media so myself and the rest of the team can find it and check it out. And if you're running into any issues with the rigging, with recording, or anything I've talked about here today, the best place to get help is the official Character Animator forums. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching and have fun.